So, Bill, you've got a new release in the private edition line of whiskies. Would you like to tell us a little bit about it? Maybe start off by telling us how to say the name.
Okay, the name is pronounced Glenmorangie Artein, although there are some people who suggest it might be pronounced Artein. But for the time being, Artein, Artein.
And it's part of the private edition line. What sets it apart from the other two whiskies in the line?
Okay, I think what sets it apart is that it's had a very, very long gestation period. It's an idea that went back many, many years, and it was through my love of wine. A lovely Italian gentleman called Nadi Fiore introduced me to the delights of Sassicaia wine from Tuscany, and I wasn't familiar with this wine or its reputation up until that point. That was about 10 years ago. So very quickly I thought I could make a Glenmorangie if only I could get hold of some of the casks from Sassicaia. And happily I was able to get some reasonably quickly. So I say, I'm going back about 8 or 9 years now, and I filled some Glenmorangie whiskey, which at that time was about 14, 15 years old, and just saw how it developed. But I became so intrigued by the flavours, and I got such positive feedback from little test tastings that I bought some more barriques from Sassicaia and filled some slightly younger whiskies in. And it's of last year I took the two elements, which were about 15 and 21 years old respectively, and blended them together in a particular proportion. And so this bottle, Artein, is the end result.
So it's not really like a 2-year finishing, as in the Sonnalta.
No, it's actually, a combination of like a 7-year-ish and a 3 to 4 year finishing. So it's been done quite differently. So
what about the taste? Is it any good?
Obviously, I am going to say yes to that. But we've had some fantastic independent endorsement so far. Charlie McLean, for example, is raving about it. And I would say that it has a lot of the classic hallmarks of Glenmorangie in that it's very fruity, it's very, very complex, but it's got a real backbone to it, which I think is probably from the French oak. So the drinker will encounter summer fruits like berry fruits and strawberries, lots of fleshy, peachy fruit in there, floral honeysuckle notes, and deeper notes like coffee and spearmint and licorice. So, a real cornucopia of complex flavours in there.
Yeah, it sounds like it's not a one note whiskey, that's for sure.
Absolutely not. And when I finally did the tasting notes for it, it took me many attempts of tasting the liquid and smelling it, doing it at different strengths before I felt I was comfortable with finding as many of the flavours in there as I could do.
So now where is it available?
It will be available at selected quality retailers globally, and we will be targeting again our main strategic markets with this, because obviously it's a more limited release than our original, for example. So you'll find it in the UK, in the United States, out in certain markets in Asia, in Germany, France, places like that.
Is it a limited edition?
It is. Unfortunately, by the very nature of the product, there's only about 3,000 9-litre cases available. So we are anticipating that it will go fairly quickly.
So get in fast.
That would be my advice. Get some while you can.
Yeah. Now, what's the bottling strength on it?
It's bottled at 46% alcohol by volume. It's non-chill filtered. And, we've made that the strength for the first 3 releases in the private edition. That doesn't necessarily mean we're going to stick with that. But personally, I think for some of these very classic, complex Glenmorangies, I want to make it non-chill filtered, but they work better at a slightly lower strength than natural cask strength, the 46 ABV for Artein.
So would your advice to anyone who purchases a bottle be to put a drop of water in it or take it neat?
For this one, I would say that, after experimenting and trialing it many times in the lab, I believe a splash of water really does bring out the best in it. But, taste it neat and then cut it with a little bit of water. But be careful, not too much.
Yeah, now just briefly tell us a little bit about the other two, the Sonnalta and the Finealta.
Yeah.
Did I say that correctly?
Absolutely. And it just so happens that I've got a bottle of each of them here. So Sonnalta was the first one, and I used basically 10-year-old Glenmorangie, all from first fill bourbon barrels, and finished it, extra matured it for 2 years in Pedro Jimenez casks. I was slightly concerned that the PX flavours might totally dominate, but with a shorter finishing of the 2 years, we think we managed to get the balance just right. So it's very rich and spicy and oily and fantastic with a nice cigar. Number 2 was my attempt, the Finealta, to try and recreate the way we imagined Glenmorangie would have tasted 100 years or so ago. And, we dug out some very old recipes. We took a view that the whiskies in these days throughout all of Scotland would be much smokier and more peaty. So this allowed me to use some secret Glenmorangies that I distilled back in the 1990s, which I called Alt-na-Main, after the hill behind the distillery, medium peated whiskies, and put together a recipe to create a very old-fashioned style of Glenmorangie. But, going back to Artein, I would say to people, if you love the taste of Glenmorangie, you're going to find everything you like there and more in this bottle.